Robert Eggers' first popular film is named The Witch, even though it really isn't about a witch. So, what is it about? Well, let's talk about it. Right from one of the opening scenes in The Witch, we are introduced to the tensions of the film. Thomasin believes she is corrupt, and the father's pride leads him and his family into exile, and everything unravels from there. So, this is not just a movie about witches attacking a Christian family. It's about what happens when pride, repression, fear, and rigid faith create the very condition that makes evil feel like freedom. So, welcome to Redeeming Horror, where we discuss horror films through a Christian lens, seeking to find faith in the fear. If you like this video, please subscribe for more. Now, let's talk about The Witch. William and his family is exiled at the beginning of the film from the plantation, not because he's weak in faith, but because he believes he is more faithful than the others. He believes he stands on theological high ground. And when they arrive at the edge of the wilderness to start their own settlement, he declares, "We will conquer this wilderness, it will not consume us." And while this sounds strong, biblical, with echoes of Genesis, listen closely to what he's really saying. There's no humility or sense of vulnerability. He has an outspoken faith, but it's pride dressed as piety. And as they quickly find out, the wilderness does not respond to pride kindly. The first tragedy is that the witch takes their infant son, Samuel. Thomasin is playing with him, but they are far too close to the woods. Also, she is playing peekaboo, taking her eyes off of him, even just for a few seconds. And then he was gone. And from the moment Samuel disappears, the family and their circumstances immediately start to unravel. The crops start to fail. The traps for wildlife come up empty. The goats give blood instead of milk. And there's an ongoing division between husband and wife, William and Catherine. William insists God's favor still remains with the family. But Catherine, the mother, becomes convinced they are cursed. And instead of drawing them closer together, their theology, their faith isolates them from one another. And this has a profound impact on William as he's unable to care for his own family and protect them. Several times throughout the film, we see William chopping wood, even when they don't need any more wood. And he's chopping wood because it's the only thing he can do. It's the only thing he can control. He couldn't protect Samuel. He cannot protect Caleb. He can't provide food, but he can chop wood. And in the end, poetically, he dies crushed beneath the wood he stacked. And his self-made tower of unused wood becomes his own tomb. And before he dies, he finally confesses, "I am infected with the sin of pride." But William's pride is only part of the story. There's something else moving beneath the surface. Desire. Caleb's attraction to Thomasin is subtle but unmistakable. His gaze lingers on his sister. He is entering manhood and dealing with all that entails. But in this rigid Puritan world, there is no safe place for him to explore, ask questions, or understand. There's a desire that I'm sure he assumes is from his sinful nature, and he represses it. So the symbol in the film of Caleb's desire is an apple. To help his dad out with an argument with his wife, Caleb lies about them searching for apples in the woods. Later in the movie, he goes into the woods to prove himself. And when he is in there, he meets the witch. And when he meets her, she appears young and beautiful and seductive, everything that young Caleb desires. And he gets closer and closer, and as soon as he reaches out, she pulls him in. And later, he returns home, naked and completely delirious. And right before he dies, he coughs up an apple, revealing the desire that consumed him and led to his own death. The film makes something very clear. The witch is real. We see her with the baby Samuel. We see her seducing Caleb. We hear Black Phillip speak at the end. This isn't a psychological horror pretending. Evil exists. But notice how it operates. Samuel was taken, but only because he got too close to the woods and wasn't being looked after closely. Caleb finds the witch's house, but she takes him only after he makes the first move toward her. The witch doesn't storm the house or even attack directly. Instead, she isolates. Instead, she waits and sows suspicion. The twins in the film accuse Thomasin over and over again of being a witch. Thomasin accuses the twins. The mother suspects her daughter at the end. The family collapses from within long before the witches finish them off. The evil in the woods doesn't need to destroy them. It just waits, simply exposing what's already there. We have to talk about Catherine, the mother, because her ending is one of the most tragic and disturbing parts of the film. She begins the film as a confident, God-fearing wife and mother. But after Samuel dies, something in her snaps. She's unsettled and honestly an undesirable character. Or maybe she was the only one who sensed the evil from within her family. Toward the end of the film, she wakes in the night and sees her dead children, Samuel and Caleb, alive, restored, nursing at her breast. But it's a dream, a very cruel dream. And she wakes up instead to find a crow pecking at her chest. Instead of her giving life-giving nourishment to provide for her children, she is being consumed. Later, at the end of the film, she emerges from the house, hair down, wild. In Puritan culture, a woman's hair down was a sign of disorder, of exposure, of madness. She is no longer composed. She has cast off her faith itself. She is no longer restrained. Grief has turned to hysteria and eventually rage. And Catherine's story ends when she attacks her own daughter, Thomasin. Not a witch, not a demon, her own daughter. She accuses her of being a witch, of destroying the family. And Thomasin is forced to defend herself against her mother and ultimately kills her own mother. And this is the final unraveling. The wilderness does not kill this family. Grief does. Pride does. Suspicion does. And the witch simply watches. By the time Black Phillip finally speaks to Thomasin, Thomasin has lost her brother, her baby brother, her father, her mother, her reputation, her protection, her future. She's been blamed for everything. She's been scapegoated, accused, threatened with death. And now, alone in the barn, Black Phillip asks her a question.
What's that like the taste of butter and pretty dress? Wouldst thou like to live deliciously?
Yes.
Wouldst thou like to live deliciously? Notice what he offers. Butter, a pretty dress, to see the world, to write her name in his book. These are not grotesque temptations. They are ordinary human longings. Comfort, identity, adventure, agency. And then, like Philip says, remove thy shift. It is both vulnerability and transformation, a shedding of an old identity. And she obeys and enters the wilderness to join the witches. Here's what makes this ending so powerful. For the first time in the film, someone asks Thomasin what she wants. In her Puritan world, she has no voice, no choice, no future, but servitude or suspicion. But the devil offers her autonomy. And this is the terrifying genius of the story. Evil feels like liberation. Evil feels like freedom. You know, the witch, I don't believe, is mocking Christianity. I think instead it is examining what happens when faith becomes fear, when authority becomes pride, and when desire becomes shame. The father's pride isolates the family. The mother's grief consumes her and her entire family. The children's fear breeds accusation. And Thomasin, already convinced she is sinful, eventually becomes what everybody believes her to be. And there's a chilling theological insight here. When grace is absent, guilt becomes identity itself. Thomasin begins the film fearing that she is wicked. And she ends the film embracing that wickedness. Not because she was always evil, but because she was never offered mercy. The final image of Thomasin rising into the air with the witches is haunting. Is she damned? Yes. Is she free? In a tragic sense, also yes. And that tension is what makes The Witch so unsettling, because it forces us to ask, what kind of spiritual environment are we creating? One where confession leads to grace, or one where confession leads to suspicion? One where desire is shepherded, or one where it is shamed into secrecy? The devil's greatest weapon in this story is not power, it is patience. He waits until faith breaks and pride collapses. He waits until grief turns into rage, and then he simply asks the question, wouldst thou like to live deliciously? Thanks for watching.